How do you think ENDA could have been handled differently? Do you think the wounds opened in the community can be healed given the rancor over it?
Well, I think the wounds in the community must be healed because we have to work together to ultimately pass an inclusive bill. And we got to start strategizing at our earliest possible opportunity on that. My hope, and I could go back and talk a little bit about what I thought went wrong, etc. But my hope is that the coalition, United ENDA, and other voices that spoke out in terms of an inclusive bill will lay the groundwork so that the next session of Congress, because I don't think it'll be signed into law this session of Congress, no matter what happens in the Senate, so that we start with an inclusive bill next session. And that's my big fear, is that if we don't come back together and all unite on the same page, we could start with two separate bills in the next session, which would not be, which would put us in the same difficult position that we're in right now. With a president who will hopefully pledge to sign an inclusive ENDA, there's no reason why that shouldn't be our point of departure in the 111th Congress, which is the next Congress. Back to how it unfolded this time, I think in many ways you'd be surprised at how little disagreement there was among a group of people who are all ultimately, I believe in their hearts, absolutely committed to an inclusive bill. The concern was raised about number of votes, just like we were talking about with hate crimes. Do we have the number of votes we need to pass an inclusive ENDA, to resist a meddlesome, mischief-making Republican amendment that would clearly be brought forward? I believe that in answer to the first question, that we had the votes to pass an inclusive ENDA. I agree with most of my colleagues in the Democratic leadership that we might not have had the votes to push back a meddlesome, mischief-making amendment brought to the floor. The question then is, what do you do about that? I think I would have, if I could have called this all on my own, pushed forward and taken that risk. With the momentum that we had around the entire bill, to say, let's try to keep everyone together to resist this mischief-making amendment. And maybe they wouldn't offer it. Maybe they'd offer something else instead. So it was a risk, but a calculated risk. And then lastly, if they did pull out gender identity, at least it's the adversaries of an inclusive bill that did it, not the proponents of an inclusive bill. But really, when it all boils down to it, and I'm not expressing any ill will for any of my colleagues in the leadership, because I know they are as committed as I am to getting to an inclusive bill, it was a strategic and tactical difference of opinion. And I don't think there's a lot of disagreement on where the votes lay in regard to this. So it was a very difficult debate while we were having it, but we have to pull back together and recognize that we do have strong allies, and we need to do the work on the ground to make sure that next time we can start with an inclusive bill.
Thank you so much, Representative Baldwin, for talking to me and my readers.